thanks so much. So again, thanks for coming to Celebrating Our Music. Please tell us or tell people who might pretend not to know who you are a little bit about yourself. Who is Chanda Mbao?
Sure. I mean, in a brief description for, I guess, the person who doesn't have a lot of time, Chanda Mbao is a Zambian hip hop artist who's been active in the Zambian music industry since 2016.
Excellent. Thank you for that. Okay. Could you tell us what genre of music you make or you prefer to make? Maybe.
Definitely, my primary genre is hip hop / rap. But having said that, as I guess we've discussed prior, there's always that part of us that, because we're influenced by different things and because, we're not static as human beings, there is an element of exploration where genres will mix and collide sometimes. And I've definitely done things influenced by Afro, definitely done things influenced by, that's Afrobeat, definitely done things influenced by R&B, and probably more genres that don't come to my mind right now. But primarily, I'd say hip hop and rap.
All right. Thanks for that. It's good that you say what you primarily what you primarily do. Because I recently just made note that there's a company that's giving out awards or some other thing, and they just lumped music into one whole group. They were not separating genres. So I like to hear from an artist what they perceive themselves to be, an artist of. Yeah. My second question is, has the pandemic affected you professionally or personally, and how, in what way has it affected you?
Definitely. I mean, I think it's affected all artists in a way, in the sense that most people that are artists, their primary source of income is shows and performances. And during COVID, that's been completely wiped out for the most part, and is only starting to, I guess, ease up now in certain geographies. So definitely financially, firstly, but then I guess the one upside is maybe that there's been more time to be creative, I guess.
Okay, excellent. I'm happy that you mentioned the financial aspect, because that was one of the reasons why that sort of motivated me, because I saw a few posts on social media saying, how can we support artists? So it's good that it comes from you and you mention it also. The creativity, I'm going to ask you about that, because I've seen you've put out quite a number of projects this year, and I'm going to get to that. But so my third question, you have your Wave trilogy, Wave, Bigger Wave, Final Wave, and it's been quite successful internationally. Do you think, and I think, no, not do you think, I think our perceptions about artists that sing or produce content primarily in English is changing. But why do you think there's like a little bit of resistance towards artists that perform primarily in English?
I think it's a very interesting question. If I want to be philosophical, I'll say that it's a subtle rebellion against a colonial language. But if I want to be more frank, I actually think it's a manifestation where I guess reverse classism, in the sense that I think the association with English speakers is that they attach, I think, class connotations to it sometimes, and I think that may lead some to feel like certain people should be alienated because maybe they're not Zambian enough.
What? Okay, no, but I would never have thought of that, and it's sort of like as a consumer of Zambian music, I've never sort of like paused and said, I prefer this over that.
Yeah.
I like what I like. If it sounds
Yeah.
good, if it makes me dance, if I understand it, those are my primary things, but
Yeah.
it's good that you put a light on it from that perspective, and all right, I'll move on to my next question. Otherwise, I won't stop talking.
Oh, okay. No,
So
there's no pressure. I mean, feel free. Especially now that the connection is working.
I know, right? But it's interesting that you mentioned that subtle rebuttal or rejection of the colonial language. It could be that, then also the element of classism. It's quite for me, it's quite curious, and I love that you mentioned those things. It's something that we probably have to delve in some more. So I will move on to my next question. Your last full, I guess I'm using full here loosely,
Yeah.
Solo album was in 2017, right?
Correct.
And since then, you released many singles, like I'm working off information from your profile on Apple Music, okay?
Yeah.
So do you think singles do you think it's better to release singles than full 14 or 13 song albums?
Better
Why?
is subjective. Better kind of depends on what your goals are. So
Okay.
I wouldn't say better, but I would say that, in our specific journey, myself and my team, there was definitely a notion or a desire to build our following. And what we noticed, what we noticed is that, I guess, partly due to content cycles, partly due to attention spans, partly due to I guess the way platforms are designed these days. Singles are kind of more bang for your buck from a following perspective. The amount of how can I say, the amount of incremental following that you gain from a single roughly approximates the amount of incremental following you gain from a project. So when you look at it from an ROI perspective, if you're going to invest a bunch of time, energy, and other resources, money, etc., it's kind of better ROI for you if your goal is to grow a following, to spend time thinking about singles.
Oh, I love that you said this. I mean, it really it gives a lot of insight, because even something that YouTube is sort of like encouraging YouTubers to do is make shorter bits of content, because then you put out more frequently.
Exactly.
So it makes a lot of sense. I love that you break it down like that. Your love for Zambia is a common theme in most of your music, but also the fact that you use your very Zambian name, Chanda Mbao. You're not like, like, for example, if I was to make music and I wanted to be an artist, I'll probably like Jackie Light or something like this, but just playing around with words. But you're Chanda Mbao, and I respect that, which is rare in hip hop and rap. Why is it important for you, to highlight your heritage, your roots, your Zambianness?
Yeah, I guess for me, there's, I guess, a very particular kind of historical context to that, is that I would say my first real experience is doing like music. The first time I recorded in a professional studio, the first time I performed in front of like a commercial crowd, I wasn't living in Zambia.
Yeah.
So that for me was a little bit of an impetus in terms of moving in a direction where I felt I want to stamp who I am on these people that I'm meeting. It was just really important for me to have identity. And so I used to just go by my initials, which are CCM. But then I decided that I wanted to be something more easily, I guess, identifiable with my heritage. I figured that for these people who are seeing me for the first time, if they heard Chanda Mbao, it might confuse them. They'd be curious about it. But if they, if they asked or if they looked me up, they'd find out that it was Zambian. And for anyone Zambian who were to come across me, they would know immediately. Like I'm pretty sure that name, that combination of names, doesn't exist anywhere else in the world. So I thought that, that I wanted the Zambianness to come out. So the context of being outside of home, I think, was a big impetus for me, right? Because if you're living in Zambia, I don't know. I think that's why it's more common for people to have aliases and AKAs locally, because they don't necessarily feel like they have to showcase their Zambianness. It's almost like it's a given, right? But when you're living outside of Zambia, it's not a given. There are people like, where are you from? Are you American? Are you this? Are you that? Are you, so it was kind of like just important for me to assert my identity. And I was at the time, and I guess still somewhat so, very keen on kind of Afrocentric literature and things like that. And so I just wanted to do something that I thought I could do that would speak to asserting that identity.
Oh, excellent. I love that you say this, because even for me, who's living away from Zambia, or the few people that I've talked to, and also the whole, not just Black lives, but always trying to remind people or tell people, because people get easily confused. They will assume you're this by the way you sound or by the way you dress. So I love that you give this perspective, you using your name so that people know, and they have a sense of who you are. Please tell us a little bit about, because mainly when I saw the project come out, the One Nation project, I was like, oh, I would love to speak to you about it. But you released it, I think it's almost 4 weeks ago now. Could you tell us a little bit more about it? I will let you just talk, and then I will ask you more specific questions about it.
Yeah, sure. So, in essence, the One Nation project is a collaborative album that features 32 artists and producers from all 10 provinces of Zambia. The reason why we decided to do this, in kind of talking to my team and their thoughts on the music environment in Zambia, well, really, it was me expressing my frustrations at some of the things I noticed about Zambian music, which is that it can be at times somewhat divisive. And what I mean by that is, like, for example, you asked me why I might believe there's resistance against English-speaking rappers. So some people in some corners are like, oh my gosh, this guy's not, like, he's too international, this will never work here. Somebody else is rapping in Vernac, and they're like, no, this guy is like way too local, he'll never be able to represent us on the international stage. So it's like, no matter what you're doing, like, there's like constituents who are dissatisfied. But I feel that that's inappropriate. One, because the Zambian music industry is too small for us to kind of be playing these like divisive games. But two, I just believe that logically speaking, there's space for everyone. So we wanted to do something that spoke to that, and something that with kind of modest resources we had access to could make a meaningful statement in trying to rectify that rhetoric. And so this was what one of my team members suggested. So shout out to Mob. He's like, why don't we do a collaborative album that tries to put at the forefront every single part of this country, so it's very inclusive and very kind of like, it's a positive statement. It's, it's something that's a spirit of unity. But then we also had this other notion that we wanted to try and extend a hand to younger artists, or artists who are, I guess, earlier in their journey of building their following. So we very much focused on them, but we wanted to make sure that all parts of the country were represented.
Excellent. Thank you so much for that. It's good that you give us a little bit of background and the why, because that why isn't in your in your press release on your IG, for example, because I went and I read the one that you posted on the 23rd, or the day before, the 22nd. before you dropped the project. More on the One Nation project, what was it like for you to work with so many different artists spread across the country during this global pandemic? What were the challenges, if any? Yeah.
Yeah, no, I mean, I thoroughly enjoyed it. It was a little bit stressful because everybody was working remotely, so everyone is in their own location. Obviously, you know, well, not obviously, but unfortunately, we didn't have the resources to put everyone in one physical place. You know,
Yeah.
the process flow might have been easier if we did have those resources, but since we didn't,
Yeah.
we kind of made do with what we have. And each kind of artist recorded where they were at and sent through files to my centralized studio, where we basically loaded up the projects and put everything together. So overall, I would say the salient thing is it was a gratifying experience because we weren't sure whether we were going to make it, whether we were going to stick to the time we had committed to. We said we wanted to drop on the 23rd of October. We weren't sure whether we'd manage to hit all the geography. So overall, and you know, there were definitely challenges, but overall, I think we managed to stick to what we promised to do, and that's, for me, that was the first thing to hit. But it was not without challenges. You know, there's things like file formats, things like mic qualities from different studios. You know, so trying to just reconcile everything was definitely a challenge. But I think all things considered, we did well and we stuck to our word. So.
Oh, you know, I love that you mention all these things because, you know, we see a project, we see the final project, yeah. And as a fan, you consume it and then you go about your day. But, you know, listening, it's quite involving. And congratulations, by the way. Actually, I should have led with that. Congratulations on releasing the One Nation project.
Thank you.
One big thing that I noticed is that all proceeds from the One Nation project are going to charity. And it's being sold exclusively on, you know, a specific platform. So I want to know, from your perspective as Chanda Mbao and the other artists, why was this important for you, that, you know, that this project be presented like this as a means to support a charity and to be, you know, accessible to the music consumers or your fans via this specific platform?
Yeah, so I mean, the reason why we chose to launch it on a Zambian platform, I mean, I don't know if you have an advertising policy or anything, but I
have one now.
Okay, gotcha. Okay. No, I typically just say it, but because it's a Zambian platform, that was the first reason.
Yeah.
And then the second reason was because they're Zambian and because there's kind of direct access to the accounting part of the software, we can very easily route towards a charity. Like if it were to be like iTunes and Spotify and whatever, there'd need to be like a consolidated account linked in the back, and also the kind of unit values are really low. Obviously, we'd need to have like, you know, a ton of streams to like make any meaningful donation. And the simple fact that, you know, even Zambia is not even, for example, an approved geography on Spotify. So everyone who has Spotify in Zambia has it because they're either somehow linked to another geography or they're running a VPN, right? So those were the reasons. You know, it's just kind of more practical given the context of what we wanted to do on the charitable side. And it's also consistent with the theme, right? If we're talking about unity, we're talking about Zambian artists, Zambian producers, you know, one Zambia, one nation, Zambian independence. It kind of just made sense that we work with a Zambian platform.
Excellent. I love it. I mean, I imagined those were the motivations, but, you know, I didn't check all the boxes. So it's good to hear from you, and it shows, you know, like getting all the artists to agree, you know, to this. It definitely brings out what you were aiming for, the whole, you know, One Zambia, One Nation project. It perfect. Congratulations to you, your team, and all the artists that worked on the project. Um, you always seem to have really great collabs for your music projects, yeah? So I guess what I want to know is why are collaborations important to you as an artist? What do they do for you?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I was actually thinking about this the other day. So from a strategic or like kind of practical perspective of building a career in music, the kind of main utility is obviously growing a fan base, right? Because somebody has an existing fan base, and when that person's existing fan base encounters your content via their existing interest in that artist that they follow, some of those artists are going
Mm-hmm.
to like you, and you thus grow a following, right? And so does the other person, right? Because the other person's fans are not necessarily your fans, so you kind of
Yeah.
exchange or swap fans, right? Is the kind of practical wisdom about it. But I guess on a more
Mhm.
personal level, I was wondering, because a lot of my singles especially have been have been collaborative projects, and I was thinking, it how I felt about that. And I realized that one of the reasons why I like the singles being collaborative projects, one, I do like working with singers a lot. And so like Scott obviously being a really
Yeah.
close friend and collaborator. I love his talent and what he's able to do, and it complements what I do in a way that I can't on my own. So that's like the kind of practical
Mm-hmm.
musical reason. But I also actually
Yeah.
realized that I get gratification from realizing projects that aren't just about me. I actually have a little bit of apprehension about being very self-promotional. It's just like a personal thing that I
Ah,
struggle with. So I prefer where there's a team or a group or a duo. Like it's just I feel more comfortable within that context. Um, yeah, I guess I'm a reluctant celebrity in inverted commas.
it's it's kind of curious. I mean, I've kind of figured that, because my first question is always tell us about yourself. And you really, you went very quickly. You answered that very fast. I'm Chanda Mbao, and I've been making music since, but other people, they'll be like, I'm so and so. It's not a bad thing. I'm not saying it's a bad thing, but I sort of sense that you were reluctant about, being in the spotlight like that, in that way, so thanks for that. um so my next question is, what for you is your biggest support system as a creative, as a musician? Why is it, why is a support system, why do you think a support system is important for
That's
you,
a very interesting question.
if at all?
Yeah, no, for sure. I'm definitely, it's interesting because going kind of in keeping with the theme of the last question, there are certain artists who are,
Mm-hmm.
the prominent example of this in Western hip hop is a guy called Russ, whose whole narrative is kind of about kind of complete self-reliance. He's like, I record, I
Who, sorry,
Russ,
could you say the
his
name
name is
again?
Russ.
Russ,
So his
okay.
whole thing is he produces his beats himself, he records himself, he raps, he sings, he then does post production himself. So his whole thing is being completely insulated and self reliant, and it's, while very respectable, it's not necessarily my philosophy. I kind of believe in specialization, partly as a function of time. I don't have time to do all the parts of the supply chain, as it were. Um,
Yeah.
so that's one reason. But also, sometimes I think encouragement comes from the people that you work with. So having a good set of people that you can work with definitely helps keep you motivated. As an example, I
Yeah.
wasn't going to pursue music in Zambia initially until kind of meeting a few like-minded individuals. The first of whom is a Zambian artist called Calidocious, and he, for whatever
Ah,
reason, I guess he had seen like my first music video that I released in the US, actually my first two music videos, had seen kind of what I represented, I guess, as far as the standard to which I was trying to do things. So regardless of genre, he was like, I can tell that like, one, you care, you're willing to kind of invest your resources because obviously, you're early in your journey, but the kind of product quality is high. And he's like, and he kind of
mm-hmm.
just encouraged me to continue that. And not to exclude myself from the Zambian music narrative, you know, where initially I was just like, no, I'm not gonna I'm not gonna do it. There's no use in me doing what I do here. So things like that, you know, are a direct example of why having a good support system is critical. So I'm very kind of consistent about that. I record in the same studio. I go on the same day every week. You know, I obviously have like a 9 to 5 situation. So I set aside one day a week.
Yes.
It's the same day every week with the same people there. So I guess I'm also a creature of habit by personality. So that is part of it. But I definitely think that encouragement, that also the practical element of the specialization are the two key reasons to have a good support system.
Yeah. I love it. I love it. I love it. I'm not even going to say anything more because you've given, I mean, I'm not going to say the reply I was hoping for, but I think it's a complete answer. So I really appreciate that. Thank you. What do you think should happen for musicians or everyone involved in the Zambian music industry to benefit more from it? You know, benefit, when I say benefit, I mean, you know, like make tons of money or get tons of international recognition and all the glory. So what do you think should happen?
I guess probably what's most urgently needed in Zambian music, and probably in a lot of different spaces in Zambia, to be honest. It's funny because whenever people ask me about some of the woes of the music industry or issue their complaints, I always bring to their attention how music doesn't stand alone. Most of the problems that you can identify in the Zambian music industry are actually problems in every industry in Zambia, you know, so it's a funny thing, but if you reflect about it, you realize that. But to give the feedback specific to Zambian music is what I think needs to happen is infrastructure needs to be created. It's interesting because I get a lot of messages, and this was one of the reasons for the One Nation project, but I get a lot of messages from younger artists. Sometimes I get comments on social media posts from young artists. Sometimes I just see them on other people's social media. But one of the ones I recall seeing was something about how come in Zambia everybody famous is like older, you know? And the answer to that is, I believe, I can't claim to know everything, but in my observation, and I've spent a lot of time thinking about this, precocious success is a function of well-functioning infrastructure. The reason why I can be Justin Bieber and be like whatever, 17 or whatever when he was discovered and become a global superstar in North America, he's Canadian, but was obviously kind of in between Canada and the US, is because there's infrastructure. There was this thing called YouTube where there was these record label guys, namely Scooter Brown, looking for talent through this platform that they have built for this, among other purposes. Yeah. And then there's a whole system that they can take Justin Bieber and plug him into to make him a viable commercial product. That is not the same in Zambia. There's a very little of a system. There's a very small one. It's relatively informal. There's relatively few players, and the kind of gross amounts of revenue being generated are, you know, not large enough to sustain a globally competitive music industry. So what we need is more infrastructure. And so what that means at a practical level is we probably need a lot more non-musicians to get interested in music and start designing and implementing that infrastructure and funding that infrastructure. Because building infrastructure is kind of a long-term exercise, right? Like Hollywood didn't just happen. It like took decades and decades of stuff, right? So that's what needs to happen.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not going to say perfect answer, but really that's how I feel. I'm like, you can't see me, but I'm here and I'm nodding to everything. Yes, it's true. It's true. It's true. It's true. It's true. So thanks for that. You know, you are very social media savvy. Okay. I mean, looking at your IG, your Twitter, your YouTube, what tips would you give a young person starting out today about branding and using social media?
Wow, I mean, thank you. I mean, I definitely feel like I'm not. I wish I were better with social media. These days, I think the younger artists and the younger people are even like tons more savvy than I am. But from what I've learned on my journey, I have learned a few things. One of the obvious things I think that sometimes people get wrong is just, I think, try and make your presence somewhat uniform and consistent. So that's why I'm just Chanda Mbao on everything. So like, make yourself easy to find is the first
Yeah,
thing. Ideally, I mean,
yeah,
granted, sometimes, and I guess I'll take a step back, because the blanket piece of advice would be to don't optimize or don't design your career around thinking you are going to, I guess, what I call win the lottery, which is have like a huge hit and become this like commodity that everybody is looking for at the same time, and people just can't get enough of you. That's the vast minority of artists. So approach
yeah,
your social media, approach your career in general, with a more kind of like practical level of modesty, in the sense that assume that not everyone is obviously going to want to find you, right? And so if that's the case, you want to make yourself easy to find, right? You want to make things easy to remember. So if you have a logo, for example, I internally pride myself on being one of the earlier Zambian artists who have a consistent logo. My logo is on basically everything I do. So whether or not people realize it,
yeah,
they're probably familiar with it now, so things like that, just approach it like you are running a well-run small business, you know what I mean? So where you're not making the assumption that people will obviously come to you.
yeah. Okay, okay. I mean, I love how, I hope I haven't cut you off there, but I love how you've been, like you've been blunt and, like, no, consider this, or think about this, make yourself easy to find, because before I was doing interviews, I was looking for artists to add to my world famous Zambian music playlist on Apple Music. And an artist will say they've released something, and they are, I'm just gonna say, a random name. Maybe they say their name is John on Twitter, and they say they have a song out, and then you click on the link for, let's say, their YouTube channel, and they're not John, they're Frank on there. So personally, and then when you go to their Apple Music, they're Frederick or something else, and it made me a little reluctant. Like, am I really supporting the guy or the person that was in my DM or that came on my timeline? Is it really their channel, or it's someone else? So thanks for talking about being consistently the same name, for example, on all your socials. That's super helpful.
The other thing, I guess, let me add two things to that. One is, who try and figure out who you are, I guess, in inverted commas. And this is something that I guess is easier said than done, because, I think like a real social media expert would have a lot of advice, even for me in this area. But trying to create, say, a unique aesthetic that, that creates a little niche for yourself is very effective. So whether that means through collaboration. So one thing that I've taken a step at doing, and some people do even better than me, is, for example, I primarily work with the same photographer. So, a lot of my kind of high res photography has a certain style to it. So if you can find that unique aesthetic or unique pocket for yourself, that's good for you. That's another thing I would say. And then the last thing I would say is, once you figure that out, be consistent about it, and growth will definitely happen.
Excellent. Thank you for that, because I think that's true even for those of us who are making content for YouTube and so on and so forth. You want to do that, but you want to try and do that. You might not always manage. You might be just always using maybe the same phone, for example, if you're using a phone to take photos, simple, not simple, but little things, but that add up and are important. So I appreciate you saying that. I'm sorry I cut you off before, and I wanted to get my opinion in. So, my final question, and we're getting to this one, but I want to thank you really again. I've said it before, but thank you for making the time. Where do you still see yourself as Chanda Mbao in the next 5 years?
That's a good question. I mean, I guess in 5 years, 2025 is a pretty long time, but I definitely want to do kind of more in the vein of like One Nation project, and in a way participating in what I guess we discussed earlier, which is about building the infrastructure and contributing towards something that helps other artists and especially younger talent. It's something I'm pretty passionate about. I guess maybe partly because, when you look at your life in hindsight, you always think, why not be the person that I wish I had when I was younger? You know what I mean? If there's a person that, a young person that doesn't know something that you can help guide on, or, you can create a platform that can help identify some of these young people, why not? It's kind of pay it forward, and, they'll hopefully do even more for the next generation. And that's how maybe we create a sustainable ecosystem. So in 5 years, I hope to have 1 or 2 achievements under my belt where I can say, hey, I managed to help, X number of young artists achieve Y. So I definitely see myself doing more of that, especially in the long term, like 5 years.
Oh, super. I mean, I love that you said that you want to be in a position to help. You want to be the person that you might have needed when you were younger, when you were starting off your career. And that's really, really, that's great. I love that. And probably also a little bit of my motivation for doing these interviews. I don't imagine every artist is going to be like, I'm coming to Inutu's channel to find out information. But hopefully if they do search and want to know one little factoid about the Zambian industry, I hope these interviews contribute to that, to adding knowledge and tips, and info. And that was my last question. So, we can end this, but before you go, is there like any another question, I'm sorry. Is there anything else that you would like to let us in on, like an upcoming project? Is there something you want to plug? Where can people find you on social media? I mean, I know you said Chanda Mbao before, but if you want to plug that, you could use the last 2 minutes to sort of like plug a project or anything that you want people to focus on or try and find.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I always start with thank you to all those that are supporting, because I know some of the people listening to this are already like my existing supporters. So thank you. For those who maybe are new to the journey or to the wave, you can check me out on social media. That's at Chanda Mbao on Twitter, at Chanda Mbao on Instagram, Chanda Mbao on Facebook. And you could also check out the links in my bio to download the One Nation project. Remember, all proceeds go to charity, so we really appreciate the support. And, aside from that, knowing that you're contributing something to I guess, to Zambian communities, there's also the amazing young talent that made some good music. So, for that reason alone, it's worth checking out. But in terms of future projects, I'm looking to drop 2 EPs in December as, I guess, end of the year projects for my fans. And I'm also convinced that we're going to release what is video of the year in a few weeks. So that's what people can expect.
I want an interview when that video drops, please. And the EPs. Okay. Dibs on interviews. But yeah, thanks, Chanda. You've really, really been great. And I'm so happy that you were super flexible and you agreed to come on here, and we ended up doing this. So huge thanks. When I edit and put it up on YouTube or on this very app, I will tag you and yeah, so you can have access to it and then share it on your socials. And yeah, have a lovely rest of the day and a lovely rest of
Thank
the
you.
week.
Really appreciate the time. Thanks a lot for doing what you're doing. And yeah, just hope the young people out there are inspired and yeah, and can make use of the great content.
Yes, 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 yes.